It's the Montessori Power Hour, and I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. Today we have viewer mail. We're talking about control of error. We have a hedgehog visit, and I think we're talking about Labor Day, maybe?
Labor for sure. Labor Day was actually yesterday.
It was.
Yeah, and we celebrated it by doing some labor, which actually, is kind of the opposite of Labor Day, isn't it?
That's right.
We're supposed to not work during Labor Day, and we kind of failed that one. I feel like it's kind of Montessori of us, though, because we find work fun and enjoyable, and it's actually what we really wanted to do.
Well, it's what we had to do.
Well, yes, it is. It's the end of summer, and we're kind of getting into the swing of the school year. And I guess it feels like we did a whole lot of labor in the last couple of weeks as we're like getting things together for the courses, and we're just kind of like wrapping up and moving into our new routine.
That's right. Now, I think, I don't know if they celebrate Labor Day ever. I know it's an American holiday.
Yes.
And for those of you who don't know, Labor Day was established in the 1880s. It grew out of the labor movement of the time. And it was officially recognized in the 1890s.
Okay.
And so it's been with us a long time. I was thinking that by coincidence or not, maybe, that actually parallels Maria's own early life.
It does.
Yeah.
Wow, that's actually really interesting. Yeah, to think about. Maria really loved labor.
She did. I mean, it was at the age of, that it developed, even if Labor Day is an American holiday, this concept of labor and the redefinition of work was happening in what we call the industrial age, the second industrial revolution in the latter part of the 19th century in many places of the world. And she was definitely influenced by that, and not only sort of in her philosophy, but in the way that she saw the world change and the role of the child, even like the very nature of her work. She really started to work with those children in the sanatorium or whatever, and then she worked in the Casa dei Bambini with children whose parents were off working, I would assume in industrial, like factory jobs.
Yes, but Maria was against the kind of rote labor that the parents of those children presumably
No, of course,
may have been.
exactly.
Right.
Like they were in essence orphaned part of the day to themselves or left to their own devices. And she was brought in, and I think she was fully aware of sort of the harm on many accounts, and was tried to work to remediate that, I think, by providing to those children.
Yeah, she had this whole concept called purposeful work. And the concept was that most of the time, I think as human beings in the work world, the kind of work that we do isn't necessarily that satisfying. And maybe, that is kind of some of the promise of the digital age and the technology that is moving us forward, that maybe we won't have to engage in as much rote work that we don't enjoy doing. And we can focus more on our creative endeavors, right? Like that's the ideal vision, right? But Maria actually saw that in her day-to-day life, witnessing people doing things that we don't often think about people doing here in our more privileged society.
Yeah.
People engaging in very, very rote factory jobs. And I think that she saw a lot of dissatisfaction just in terms of human happiness from witnessing that kind of work day after day after day after day. And she wanted something better for the children that she worked with. She wanted them to find the joy in working for a specific purpose that was fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so she noticed that even though the children maybe were doing work that was fulfilling, that if they were given all these choices as to all different kinds of work that they would like to do, that they came back over and over to practice skills that felt like to them was leading them towards some kind of bigger purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Sometimes that purpose was visible, like I'm going to plant all these seeds in order to like have a harvest. And sometimes that work wasn't very visible. Like the child would just be hammering nails into a piece of wood.
Yeah.
And there didn't really seem to be a purpose involved. But in fact, Maria said there is actually a bigger purpose, and that is the development of the future human being.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think is, I think it's interesting to contrast that to the kind of rote work that we often have to do in our daily work lives.
That's right.
Work lives as adults. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
the mechanization of labor that she witnessed and was living through in the 19th century really did transform the language of work. And yeah, so it's interesting that she, I hadn't really thought about it before I looked that up, but yeah, I think there must be something. I mean, I think there's many reasons why those coincidentally interlink, but I think for sure there is something also about witnessing this redefinition of labor, this concept of why these children are not given purposeful things to do, as you know, for large parts of the day, you know, as they were kind of left.
You mean before Maria's Casa de Bambino?
That's right. When she was brought in to sort of reform this area, right? This complex of apartment complex, I guess, essentially. And yeah, so there's, and then I think it also then meets more broadly to her own life work, which I think in some sense really just comes down to that a human has value and integrity. Mm-hmm. And she drew that from from her faith, like the soul God that sort of emanated within. But more broadly, I think kind of just in the 20th century, we developed this sense of following Enlightenment principles and so forth, this idea of like the human has integrity, life, liberty, and happiness, or whatever. Here in the U.S. we would say, and I think she was witnessing that and witnessing that these children were not being given that, and one way to let them is to lean into their love of work, the human joy that we get in productive output.
Yeah. When you are in a Montessori environment, it is really surprising to a lot of people that children are finding joy through doing, I don't know, unexpected things, right? Mm-hmm. Like learning how to operate a screwdriver in a traditional daycare or childcare situation. You might see children just like playing with the toy telephone, or you know, or the toy,
or whatever it is now,
the toy smartphone, right? Or whatever, you know, like the pretend vacuuming or the dollhouse, or you know, those sorts of things. And there's nothing wrong with children engaging in pretend play, but people are often really surprised that when they look in a Montessori environment, whether it's at home or whether it's in a classroom, that they see children doing strange things, right? Things that are kind of
strange things
odd.
Are happening here.
Yes, children are grinding coffee beans, and children are, you know, cracking nuts, and they're learning how to screw and unscrew with real screwdrivers, and they're doing all kinds of
care, washing their hands, learning to flush the toilet, learning to scrub with little, you know, there's a lot of things
lots
that
of scrubbing,
little brooms
and from one perspective, we might say, why are you putting those children to work?
Yeah.
Right? Why are all these little scrubbers in here rather than just like play people, little toy people, or you know, things for children to punch buttons and see things pop up, right? Like, why are children doing this rather than that? Is it because we want to cultivate little workers for society?
Right.
Or is it actually what children are supposed to be doing? There's kind of confusion, I think, that happens when you contrast the two environments. And it's unmistakable that the Montessori environment is generally like much more peaceful and calm. But also, you know, contrast that to like the raucous kind of playtime that you might see in an environment that's only constructed for like pretend play situations.
That's right.
And people are kind of confused. They're like, I'm not sure which is better for the child. I don't want to suppress the child's imagination, and certainly the children over here are laughing and loud, and they are very apparently joyful. But what's going on with these children over here? They're focused, like maybe the look on their faces aren't necessarily like extrovertedly loud. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So I think it does confuse people. But what we know as Montessorians is that when we witness a child who is joyful, Maria Montessori says, we're looking for the signs of joy, and the signs of joy for a child actually might be that concentrated look. Like it's the open mouth, like
Yeah, what does she call that? She has a name for that, right? That look of engagement.
Concentration.
Well, no, but I thought she had
Talking about normalization?
No?
No?
There's a word I'm thinking of. Okay, folks, we're going to read my mind.
If only I could read your mind.
We have a comment that I think is a good one. It's
Lovely.
from viewer Jessica. She says,
Jessica.
the more I embrace the Montessori method, the more I ask myself, if it's safe and we have the option to do the real thing, we'll choose the real thing over the pretend version.
Love it. Yeah. So if you can allow your child to play with a real vacuum, and by play, we mean work in Montessori, right? And by work, we mean learn to use and to actually engage in, then we should do it, right?
Totally. Just
Yeah,
to continue,
I love
she
that.
says, like why a pretend kitchen when we can make the real kitchen accessible to the child and offer them a richer experience? 100%. That is exactly right. Now, there are, of course, sometimes safety concerns, but I think people are often surprised at the level.
Sure, you cannot let your kid play with a blender, right?
But you would be surprised. I think sometimes people who don't come from the Montessori world are sometimes surprised at the level of autonomy that we would give children to use safer versions of real things. So you might, a wavy chopper is still a real thing, even though it's safer than, let's say, a knife. But it cuts and it is sharp, and the child knows it's real. And they know it's real, and therefore it has more value to them. I mean, I think that's true it's just something innate to us humans, I think. I think we have, it's a whole concept about work, and we conflate work. I mean, this is like, oh, he's putting on his old hippie hat. We conflate work with money, man. But
What?
but oh no, work and money, yeah, whoa. But the truth is that actually we have, in some sense, by valuing work to an artificial construct, which is money, versus a more practical, real, material thing. Like if I grow the food, then I know I'm eating. Or maybe I'm not the farmer. Maybe I live in like late 19th century America, and I am the school teacher in town. I still know the people that are butchering the meat, or they are maybe growing the food, or the tailor, or the haberdasher, or whomever I'm getting, my dry goods salesperson, like whoever is, I'm communicating in a human way, and there's a more intricately true connection. And it feels very different than today, where everything is so abstracted from the very point of the labor itself, where we convert our labor into, in our case, we never see cash money. It's all digital, like digital to digital to digital.
It's a problem for us in the Montessori community as well, because even though we want to guide our children towards purposeful work, and a great example of that, I think, in terms of the blender, would be like, obviously you're not going to give your child the blender to just go play with, right? Horrors. But to the child, like if they see you using that blender all the time, what are you doing? You're chopping fruit, you're sticking it in the blender, putting the lid on, you're turning the button on. You're not dragging it around the house, doing other weird things with it. And from the Montessori perspective, Marie Montessori really kept telling us over and over, your child wants to do what you're doing. And so if you are using the blender appropriately and you're chopping things and putting them inside, that's what your child wants to be doing with them. And that's what they consider play.
That's right.
Right? And so for us, it might just be like, yeah, it's just a kitchen tool, I'm using it. But to the child, they're like, I want to play with that. And play to them doesn't necessarily mean go do something inappropriate with it. It means I want to do what you are doing. And I mention this because you brought up a really good point, and that is that we don't generally, most of us don't have the opportunity, at least here in the city, in our modern world here, most of us don't have the opportunity to actually witness the whole process of agriculture.
Totally.
And so during Maria Montessori's time, there were a lot of different types of adult work that were very visible to kids. Maybe mending clothes, was like a very visible thing children were witnessing. And Maria Montessori knew that if they were witnessing this mending happening, then they would want to learn how to use the needle and play with it so that they could do what the adult was doing.
That's right.
Right? But it's a problem when children don't have real hands-on things to witness adults doing.
Yes.
So it's I think it's a question that can bring some guilt to us, and sometimes guilt is there to tell us that we need to make some changes, but it's sometimes a good exercise to think about what our children are witnessing us doing. Are they witnessing us coming home and reaching for the remote and turning the TV on and sitting on the couch? Then it's natural that the children would want to learn how to use the remote.
This is how life is. Yeah.
Right. They would think that, this is what an adult does. Right. And obviously, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, sloth, but.
But that is, if that's what the child is witnessing, then that is what they will aspire to. And so if you are the one who's going out and you're engaging with the world, you're planting in your garden, you're exposing your children to, you're bringing your children into maybe some places where they can witness, planting and harvesting in action. And we've been able to do that a lot through community garden experiences here in the city. Then children are going to see those things and think, I want to play, in that way. And by which they mean I really want to do that work.
It's what you're saying is interesting because as I understand it, the purpose of, today I think we think of Labor Day as sort of a day off. And for not unfortunate, ironically, I think the people who get the day off are not the people who actually fought 150 years ago to make it a holiday, right?
Yeah.
So there's something there. But actually, the purpose, as I understand it, as they conceived it, the people who worked on it, was to celebrate work. I mean, it was essentially it is people, humans, who go and create these things, the cups and the food and so forth. And, they were looking at a time of industrialization and witnessing sort of the vanishing quality of work behind factory walls and corporate, organizations and things that anonymize.
Okay.
And part of their vision was to say, work is to be celebrated. It is the hard work of the everyday person that makes life happen. And I think that's interesting because that is, I think, related to this idea of what Maria witnessed in children, that they saw that work had value and should be celebrated, and that a good, healthy society has a good, healthy celebration of work.
I love that concept because during this time of year, we are moving into a period of getting to celebrate the harvest that is happening.
That's right.
Yes. And a kind of work that a lot of our members that I know for real are doing right now is signing up to go apple picking. Yes, I know they're going apple picking. I'm jealous. I want to go apple picking. Maybe we'll do it this year. I don't know. But this is actually apple season for a lot of us. And when they are growing on the tree, guess what? They are beautiful and they are bountiful and they are abundant. And it is one beautiful way that you can take a little step into witnessing how your food is grown, where it's grown, and do some of the work yourself of actually harvesting it, which then comes with great rewards.
Totally.
Because there is almost nothing more delicious than an apple or any kind of food, I think, picked right from the source And then, I mean, maybe there are some foods that need to be processed or roasted in some way. I'm thinking of coffee beans in particular, you know. But fruits and veggies that are fruits and veggies that are like, oh, cashews too. You got to cook those before you eat them off of the tree. But apples you can, and they're so good. I remember the very first time we went apple picking, and we actually got to eat some apples off of the tree for the first time. David and I never went apple picking.
I'm
going to
go in and cut to the chase here. I'm going to show you some photos here I found. Now, I didn't grab the one of our youngest eating the apple off the tree in your carrier.
Oh,
that is my favorite photo. But I did grab one of, this is a freshly picked apple of our youngest enjoying, and then here you and
here we are at the farmer's market.
Yeah, and this was in we must have been in Pennsylvania or in Western Virginia.
I think it was Virginia doing it. Well, we did apple pick also.
Yeah, when we lived in that part of the world, and it's and those nice photos. Yeah. I'm sure lots of folks out there have similar photos. And while we're at this, I see. Thank you for joining us from India, Vidya. I know it's not maybe it's apple. I have to know. Is it apple picking season where you are as well?
Interesting. Well, I do remember. I was about to say before you beautifully interrupted me with those adorable photos. I was about to say that like we never had a habit of like apple picking as a family when we lived in Texas, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, there weren't. Yeah.
There aren't a lot of apple orchards.
Yeah, I mean it's why
but,
the apples were tiny and bitter.
But there was an apple tree in my backyard.
Yes.
When we were living in Texas, and I loved it.
Were they edible?
They were edible to me.
Oh.
They weren't edible to anybody else. But I remember every year I would go during apple season. They were like teeny tiny little green apples, and they would grow I guess they would grow to like maybe half of the size.
Yes.
And they were very bitter, as you said. They weren't great, but they were. I thought it was amazing that I could actually go into my backyard and climb into a tree and pick a piece of fruit. We also had plum trees, which actually grow.
Those are really good. And
those
peaches
grow really well in Texas.
Yeah, stone fruit grows really well in Central Texas.
So there were, thinking back, there were definite experiences. And as a child, like I loved those experiences. Yeah. I wanted to go out and collect all the pecans from the ground that the squirrels hadn't eaten that I could.
Oh, pecans, yeah.
Right? Pecan harvests are amazing. When does that happen? Is that a fall thing?
I think that's a fall.
I think it's a November thing, maybe. Well,
yeah, if you guys if you live in a part of the world that has pecan trees, and like I did growing up, and you go harvest them and you get great big bags of them.
Yeah.
And then you take them to have them shelled if you had a lot, or you could shell them yourself. And they're so delicious.
They are. They're really delicious, yeah. So as you showed that picture of me at the farmer's market, it actually brought up a memory that has to do with apples. So I was at the farmer's market in Virginia near our house, just like shopping around for produce, and there was a lot of great produce. It must have been, I don't know, actually I think it was not fall when I was shopping. I was with my friend, and we got there, and there was a gigantic freezer. So it must have been like April or May, or maybe March, something like that. Not apple season. But this shows you how kind of disconnected I was with like agriculture at the time that I had the little kids.
Yeah.
These farmers opened up this big freezer, and they were showing my friend and I the apples that like had been kept in the freezer that had been the harvest. And my friend kind of turned her nose up at it. She was like, I don't want apples right now. And at the time, not really being in with apple picking yet, or really aware of like when apple season was really, or like the significance of it, I was confused. I was like, why wouldn't you you can get apples any time of year, right? Any time of year? And then I was like, wait a minute. You can't get apples any time of year. It's actually special, like, then it was...
I mean, you can get them any time of year.
And then it clicked. I was like, that's why apples taste so good sometimes, but not other times. It's like, sometimes apples are mushy, and sometimes apples are amazing. That's why. It's because they're fresh. And I just had never, I was an adult, like before
Yeah.
I
No,
actually
I
had
know.
made this connection.
No.
Because the apples that I had tasted off the tree were those little dinky bitter apples that we had
You
grown in
didn't
our
know that
backyard.
actually beautiful,
I didn't know
delicious apples could grow.
Like I didn't know that
I mean,
they
you
were.
knew they grew, but
I mean, they were already at our grocery store. They're at the grocery store
where do
all
apples
year
come
round.
from? They come from the produce aisle.
They do, and that means that the apples that were grown and produced during the special time of year between August and October are then like put in a deep freezer or something, and then
Or they're
brought out
grown in
into
other
the grocery
parts of
stores.
the world and shipped in vast distances. And,
Right, but so far away from like the actual season that you might be experiencing locally that they just don't taste great. And guess what? We went to the grocery store and you brought home these apples right here
From Costco.
from Costco. But I tasted one, I was like, oh, this apple tastes fresh. And then it occurred to me, it must be fresh because it's September. And that's when apple season is. Now, this is probably going to seem really, really silly to those of you who have grown up with apple orchards around you or in a part of the country where apple season is always a thing. And
But I think most people have to go visit farms and orchards.
That's true.
Like
That's
most
true.
people live in cities.
But if you're used to just shopping at regular grocery stores, like most people, you might not just feel that visceral connection to the produce.
I had a similar experience, and that was because I grew up in an agrarian area.
Yeah.
But they grew corn and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd eaten apples, of course, but I didn't realize that apples could be really, really delicious, or any fruit like fruits and vegetables could be super good if you bought really good, fresh versions of them. It was a revel. I was an adult too. I mean, it just don't think we're like carrots are okay, and then you have like a fresh carrot. You're like, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever had. It is bounteous. In fact,
It is bounteous.
It is so bounteous. We should say, welcome to Bounty.
Welcome to the Bounty.
Welcome to Bounty.
Well, friends, Bounty is the latest theme that we have published here at Child of the Redwoods in celebration of not just Labor Day, but Labor season, where we get to harvest so many good fruits and veggies. Oh my gosh, here, I even have our, this is our art of the month. Have you seen it yet?
Oh yeah, this is a really classic work.
Oh, so fun. Our members are having a lot of fun with this.
Yeah.
So we published this beautiful new theme and just wanted to share it with you. And there is something special going on the cover that David actually just showed you. Mm-hmm. It is a cornucopia,
Corn of plenty.
which makes me think about corn. And the word copious, which we know means plentiful and abundant.
That's right, the horn of plenty.
It is the horn of plenty. And
I love the cornucopia.
Do you?
I don't know why. I think because when I was a kid, I went to a mall and they had an advertisement like for washing machines or something, and it had a refrigerator, and it had this cornucopia.
it did.
Yeah, and it was at the right
A washing machine.
or a refrigerator, some kind of an appliance. And we
Okay.
went to Montgomery Ward.
It had
or
an
something
actual
like that.
cornucopia.
No, it was like well, yeah, I don't actually remember. I was so little. I must have been 4 years old or something. And it just stuck in my head. And since then, I've just thought that the idea of the cornucopia was super awesome. And it is.
Now, okay, I'm trying to envision this. You actually saw like a basket with little produce or something inside a refrigerator, or
I can't remember.
Was it
I don't remember if it was a picture or if it was like...
it must have been like a
sculpt,
whole bunch
like-
of fake fruit or something.
Yeah. Like
stuffed into a basket.
A display of some kind, like a fake fruit with the plastic or wicker cornucopia.
But you were really struck by it.
I was.
Yeah. That's a funny memory. Well, I love cornucopias too. I remember that there was one time our kids were little and I was shopping in a thrift store and I actually found a basket shaped like a horn that we used as our cornucopia. I'm sure it was designed for decorative.
It wasn't an
decorative
actual
use.
cornucopia that.
Well, there was no produce in it. It was at a thrift store. But I remember that I saw it and I nabbed it because I was like, this is perfect for the kids, for us to share the cornucopia with them. And then we had that for a long time. Our kids play with it. They were little, and so they would put the produce into the cornucopia basket, and then they would take the produce out, and it was like a little Montessori work.
Yeah,
it was fun.
That's right. Now that is not actually in the pack, but that would be a really good one.
It would have been great to put that in.
Yeah, if you have good memories, if you also have fond memories of the cornucopia, let us know. We want to know more about your cornucopia experiences. Meanwhile, let's take a look inside Bounty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to do a top down for this?
Why not?
Okay, let's do it. Let me turn on our little light here. Well, we've got our beautiful Bounty packet, and as we've already talked about, we've got this really cool art piece that's always part of Bounty. And I guess I'm just going to do a little flip through for you. Here we have our cards for Bounty, and our members are putting them inside their Montessori planning cards index box, which is really a really cool way that we have just begun to help our members organize what lessons to do, help them with make their planning easier. So we've got those.
Yeah, and those go with the foundational cards.
Sure. Let's see, we've got Eat a Rainbow. We've got Peel a Veggie, which is fun. We've got Dry Bean Soup, which is actually a sorting activity. We've got Living Art, where you make designs with
it's like a mosaic, seed mosaics.
Yes, there's the Root of Life. I did not bring mine down here, but it's where we're actually sprouting a bean and watching it.
Like classic grow a bean in a jar.
Yeah.
Sort of bean. Parts cards.
Parts cards.
This month our parts card is parts of a pinto bean.
Parts of a pinto bean. Oh, and then we've got the apple estimation. And we have a little measuring device that we're using that you made. Let me see if I can put my fingers on it.
Yeah, you just passed it. It's this way.
It's this way?
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
There we go. Yeah, to measure an apple. It's really actually an estimation activity. Mm-hmm. So that's fun. And then we've got native produce by continent, which is what we're going to be talking about today.
Oh, wait. That's right.
Oh, wait.
That meal is not here yet, but
what?
It's anxiously awaiting this segment. So.
Oh, okay. I won't go too deep into that. But yeah, it's a beautiful, and we've got the cornucopia on our linear calendar.
Yeah, that's
Lovely.
right. That's right. In fact, I wanted to share a photo from a member, Sarah. Let's see here. Yeah, I was just checking, and yeah, isn't this awesome? So that she is one of our members. She's been with us a long time and is really into crocheting. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I hope it's coming through, but you can see she printed out some of the things here. But the reason I wanted to highlight this is she has that awesome crocheted cornucopia. So isn't that beautiful?
It is gorgeous. I am always amazed.
Sarah, thank you so much for sharing that.
And such a sweet little setup for Bounty as well. I always tell our members that, members will say, like, but what if my child isn't interested in that topic, or hasn't expressed an interest in that topic? It's all about how we present to the child. How will they know if they're going to be interested in something until they have seen us engage with it? Which brings us back to that remote control, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So if whatever you are constantly engaging with and doing, your child is going to want to engage with and constantly be seeking too. So they see you punching buttons on something or playing, I hate to say it, but like playing with your phone, then that is what they're going to be wanting to do because they'll see lots of modeling. So if you want your child to be interested in engaging with the world in a different way, you've got to model it.
That's
and
exactly right.
Make it obvious and accessible. And that's exactly what Sarah is doing by crocheting all those cute little fruits and veggies for the cornucopia. And the cornucopia basket, the horn itself, her child and children, because I know that she has older kids too, they're witnessing her enjoying her own hobby and being, fruitful in a way, right? Right? And so that is going to also lead them to be inspired. Not maybe not inspired towards wanting to learn crochet
fabric arts or
something,
but
right? I mean, maybe they will or maybe they won't, but witnessing that process of being curious about the world, engaging in it. I noticed that she's knitted all kinds of really cool stuff with constellation.
She has.
Or crocheted it.
Crochet.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very cool craft. Thank you so much for letting us share that photo. It's really cool. I always love seeing how the members take the work and then kind of make it alive in their own homes and working with their kids.
Oh yeah, our members
stuff.
are amazing.
It's super fun. If you if you are a member at any level, theme of the month, complete curriculum unlimited, or even the legacy constellation, make sure you go grab your bounty packet today. It's on the member site.
Yes.
And if you aren't a member, we'll talk about this a little later, but we actually have now a chance to try it out. You can go and take a 7-day free trial of our content, our theme content. And that would be for this right now. If you sign up for the trial, you get the trial.
The theme of the month
is bounty. Okay. Now, I have some important news.
Yes. Is it the mail?
It's the mailman.
The mail is here. All right. This letter comes to us from Constantina.
Constantina.
Dear child of the Redwoods, I had a question. Can you explain to me how control of error, an important Montessori concept, yes it is incorporated in the themed unit study lessons? How do we reconcile between that and the child's ability to self-correct? Okay, so a lot of people look at our themes and say, well, is this child-led or is this adult-led? I think Montessorians tend to be extra skeptical of things. I know that I am for sure.
Sure.
When I see other curriculum out there, I'm always like putting on my hat of skepticism and saying like, is this truly serving the child? Let me think about it longer and ask questions about it and play devil's advocate and like find out like, who is this for? And so when you look at our thematic content, often I think people immediately think that because it's scripted, it must be like parent-led curriculum. And we really want to make the distinction between parent-led and parent-friendly. Okay?
Yeah.
So what the constellation themes are is they are all child-led activities in that Maria Montessori studied the development of the child, learned what kinds of things that they gravitated toward, created certain lessons and ways of teaching material that was designed to appeal to the child's very nature. Okay, and so that is really totally child-led. And all of the activities in here, they do have obvious outcomes, when we look at them from the adult perspective. But from the child perspective, they're meant to inspire, get the child going, and then it's completely open-ended as far as what the child does.
Totally.
And that's where the child leading the way comes part of it. Like if you were to only do the lesson all the way to the end and then not take the opportunity to explore all the little rabbit holes that you and your child could go down together, or that your child, to watch your child take initiative with things and then really let them go and explore that, then it definitely would be more of, it could be more teacher-led.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I liked about Sarah's photo.
It's about the philosophy, right?
Yeah, that's what I liked. That's what I thought about the photo kind of captured. I mean, she's bringing her own, and we see that from other members as well, and Montessorians. Like it's, she brought her own spirit, right? She did the crochet, the fabric art, but she's really trying to draw the child into this experience. She's got the picture, the famous painting there. She has the poem that you wrote. She has one of the cards set up. It just looks very inviting. And she has her own personal artwork itself.
Yeah.
And so that's I think where the adult is preparing it, creating it, but then inviting the child to come in and get excited.
Yes.
And that's different than the parents sitting and dictating everything. It's one thing, it's a very different to model and invite than it is to control.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And control of error, is actually one of the things that's built into the Montessori materials throughout.
Yeah.
Like the knob cylinders, I think, are a classic example of that as a physical material. But even like in our parts cards, it's meant to let the child self-correct or to check without you monitoring and guiding them directly. So I think we brought an example.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Control of error is something that Maria Montessori created as a concept. She believed that the child had the ability to correct their own errors. So when you are working with your child at home, your child actually can figure out the answer on their own if you give them enough support, guidance, time, and space to work things out. Right?
Yes.
So here's a great example. We've got our native produce by continent cards, and it's just one example of the way that we build in control of error.
Yeah, and she had actually in Sarah's photo she had included this set.
The cards, yeah.
An example of it.
Okay, so what do we have here? We've got, these are labels for the continents.
That's right.
You might be using, I'm imagining you would use this with the colored continent globe or your continent puzzle map if you're using it from a Montessori perspective. And so they are all color coded to go along with that map. And when you get your packet, I'm just going to go ahead and just cut these out and then we'll give a visual of them. But do you want to go ahead and show the cards as well?
Yeah, so the cards that go with it have, I forget how many we made for this set, maybe 20, no more than that. It has to be 26 maybe. So there's, believe 4 for each of the continents. We don't include Antarctica, but the other 6, as we would count them. Some disagreement how many continents there are, right?
Is there?
But you can see here's finger limes, here's cabbage. So these are, where on the earth are turnips native? Where on the earth are pears native?
Yeah.
I don't know that I would know this either. Matoke. Eggplant. Where are these things native? And so it's a classic sorting activity, right? Classifying. You're going to figure out where white yam is native. Now on the back of the card is the control of error. It is the continent itself. So this is Africa. It's green because we use green for Africa. In Montessori, pink. Here we have a pink South America. So the cassava is native to South America. Here we have Oceania, finger limes. And on the back you can see the little continent. Now these match to the labels that would go at the top of the work area. So here's the continent, North America, and here's that same symbol. And the child is going to first study the origin of it. So these are pole beans. Pole beans are from North America. And then they're going to go and match them to the labels after they've studied them, and then they can check them by turning the card over. And if it matches, they got it right.
Yeah, so, something like this, these are actually, this is harder. They're harder to categorize, right? Here, I'm going to give you North America. So you can see the whole spread here out on our
go
table.
To the top down here. You want to turn on the light?
So the way we do our cards, no.
No, you want to stay forward?
No, it's fine. I guess you could do top down.
Well, go for it.
No, either way is fine. Is it top down?
It's top down time.
Let's see if we can make it a little bit brighter and a little less crooked. Okay, just because that's where the camera is. All right, so we have our labels for the continents. But the first thing that you would do for this work is you would actually use the cards and talk about the produce themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
I was reading a comment.
okay. So you would talk to your child, and so maybe you wouldn't start with all of these things.
No.
You could, if your child was older, but maybe you just start with a few of them, And maybe even if your child was kind of younger, you would only start with the ones that go with a particular continent.
So what do we
And
have
so
here?
what do
Asia?
we have? Asia here. Yeah. And so maybe you would just put all of these away. You would keep out the Asia label, and you would talk to your child about how, let's talk about some of the produce that's actually not just grown today in Asia, but actually came from Asia in its place of origin.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about the different kinds. And so you can just first name it for your child. This is eggplant. And then there's an opportunity here, right? And what is that opportunity?
I don't know what you're thinking. There's an opportunity to read the word.
Right, but what if your child isn't reading yet?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me.
Well, if you're a child and you see a picture of this, what do you want to do?
I'd want to talk about it for sure. I might want to draw it.
And eat it.
I might want to eat it.
Yeah, you might want to go and find one that looks like this.
I
Now,
see.
you won't be able to find everything in this native produce packet, most likely. I mean, I don't know where I could go and find this. It's either Eki or Aki. I don't know. But you definitely can find the ones, if you can find an example of the ones that you actually have. Like, so if you actually have an eggplant at home, then your child might want to go run to the fridge and go get one, and then come back and put it in your cornucopia basket, and then you talk about how it feels and what it looks like. Same with a lychee. I know that those are easily accessible to us, but there's a lot of opportunity here for texture exploration and for using the senses. These look like bananas, but they're not bananas. Maybe it's a type, not bananas.
Yeah, these
for
look
sure.
like
But
turnips, but they're not.
yeah, they do. They look like carrots, but they're white. Daikon and the persimmons, I know we can get our hands on. And so it would be fun, as you are exploring one of the types of produce that goes along with a country. Maybe you get out your puzzle map. You're making that connection between Asia, the continent, and the different produce that are found in that part of the world. Okay. It's our battery. Our battery is dying.
Our battery is
Our battery is dying. All right, friends. Well, anyway, this is a great example of how control of error can be built. Sorry, this one is actually Africa. Having all kinds of problems during this episode. But we can check our work, and we can actually see which ones were found in Asia just by using the control of error on the back of our cards.
Yep.
Which, is difficult when it comes to something like, for even me, I was looking at okra and I'm like, maybe it does come from Asia. It turns out it comes from Africa. It's a way that you and your child can self-correct without having to go look something up specifically.
Yeah, we had a good question from Vidya. She asked, in other aspects of or curriculum, checking of answers we would consider copying. I always considered how to differentiate between the kids using them as shortcuts for answers and using them as to genuinely help them learn. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like flashcards? I mean, I guess it's just intent. I mean, you could cheat, but I think kind of part of the answer is that you're creating the expectation of a certain outcome, and that outcome is to learn and not to get 100% or something.
Yeah, when it comes to cards like these, obviously I wasn't really sure where the matoke came from myself or the okra came from myself. The control of error to look and see that it was Africa instead of Asia is actually super helpful for me as the guide. And, the whole purpose of using a material like this where we're exploring native produce is really not to memorize what continent it came from.
Yeah, that's right.
So what is the purpose of it? The purpose is to explore sorting, on a grand classification scale.
To work on reading.
And to use the cards as an opportunity to discuss and relate it back to real life, one's own real experiences.
Depending on the age of the child, thinking about how we, let's say here in California could eat a vegetable that comes from Asia.
Yeah.
Like or eggplant.
Yeah,
like,
persimmons are grown like mad around here.
yeah, well, how could that be? And this can lead to, especially in the lower L curriculum level, it can lead to some really interesting conversations about the fundamental needs and transportation and so forth. So yes, I think you're right, Vidya. Like it is easy to cheat, but it's about the intent of the activity, and that is to kind of, it's different than memorizing. Like I would argue that at the end of the day, it doesn't actually matter that they know that eggplant comes from Asia.
No.
That's a factoid that can be looked up or forgotten.
Sure.
But that they know, that the child is aware that we have this global planet and the foods and culture and
That's
the
right.
diversity and beauty of
They're
our
grown
world
all over the world.
is just part of its majesty, and that they can recognize these different kinds of vegetables and fruits and be thinking about like what does it taste like, or how could I draw that? There's all sorts of fun things. Sorry, folks, we are having a technical issue. Our battery is not charging for some reason. But I do want to handle one last question. Aaron asks, why do you choose Oceania on your cards? We attend a Montessori co-op 2 days a week, and we always refer to it as Australia.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a good explanation.
Yeah,
and it's perfectly fine to ask those kinds of questions.
It's great.
Vera.
It's a great question. Yeah, when I grew up in a Montessori school where we always referred to that continent as only Australia.
Me too. Totally.
And it turns out that by doing that, we are really leaving out New Zealand and the other little islands that are in that
Fiji
area.
and New Guinea and
Yes. Now there is evidence that New Zealand is its own continent now.
That's right.
That most of it is actually submerged underneath the ocean, but it's actually on its own continental plate. But that is kind of like in the sciencey realm. When we talk about culturally, just like when we talk about what countries are included in Europe versus countries that are included in Asia, people who live in these places of the world have real strong opinions.
Yes, they do.
About they have real strong opinions about
people
who
have
they
really
belong
strong
to.
opinions about whether this is one continent or two.
That is true. And so as Montessorians, we have to kind of make choices about how to most empathetically address people's feelings around the world, and also educate our children, geographically. And so something that we have learned, that is probably different from what we learned as children. What we learned as children is that geography is stable and unchanging.
Well, the land masses themselves over geologic time.
No.
No?
As children.
Oh, as children, we think that it's unchanging.
As children, we learned. We were actually kind of taught that they were unchanging. That we learned, we had to memorize so many names and places of things, in our educational journey as kids in school, that I think most of us emerge with the idea that, like, geography itself is static. But actually, geography is not static. The way we categorize our world, the names, we've we're old enough now to have seen countries come and disappear and merge. And so we know that maps quickly go out of date because the process of graphing the world, or writing about the world and drawing it, is a process that is
That's
ever
why
changing.
we put maps and descriptions in human